My God, how could she possibly endure this? A young woman stood frozen, forced to make a choice before hundreds of strangers to hold on to her dignity or to accept $10,000 in exchange for a chance at her sister's survival in the hospital. On one side lay her pride, on the other, the life of her loved one. Beneath the lavish golden lights of Dallas, the silence stretched on, tearing hearts apart. And then, she made a choice no one could have predicted, transforming humiliation into a moment of glory that set the entire room ablaze. Elena Marquez moved through the glittering banquet hall like an invisible shadow. Above her, crystal chandeliers glowed, reflecting the laughter of Dallas high society. Polished leather shoes glided across marble floors, glasses clinked together in a rhythm that felt foreign to a world she had never belonged to. At 25, Elena should have been standing on a Broadway stage, wrapped in a flowing white gown, but reality had locked her in the plain black uniform of a waitress. The accident years ago had erased her future, taken her parents, and left her with the responsibility of raising her younger sister, stricken with a rare illness. Every shift, every quiet step, was part of her battle to keep Isabella alive. That night, Elena was no different. She poured wine, placed dishes on tables, and moved with the patience honed over years. But fate, always merciless in its timing, found her at that exact moment. When Elena approached the VIP table to replace a bottle of wine, Grant Ellison's gaze stopped on her. Grant, 33 years old, a young real estate millionaire. The man who often graced magazine covers with his cold expression and smug smile. He was the embodiment of success come too soon. Wealth, power, and arrogance fused into a glittering shell admired and despised in equal measure. Beneath the sway of jazz, his eyes narrowed, not the glance of a guest toward a server, but the predatory stare of a hunter sizing up his prey. In that instant, Elena felt the chill radiating from his gaze. She steadied her breath, set down the wine, hoping to retreat quickly. But Grant blocked her escape. He pulled a sleek platinum card from his wallet, raised it like a weapon, his voice low but deliberately loud enough to slice through the music and draw every eye in the room toward them. $10,000. Right here, right now. If you dance for us, prove it that you're not just someone who carries trays. The sound struck like a blade. The loud chatter stopped dead. Wealthy diners, once absorbed in contracts and stock market talk, turned their heads in unison. In seconds, the luxurious hall had transformed into an arena. Elena stood frozen, her hand clutching the silver tray so tightly her knuckles turned white. Never in her life had she been humiliated so publicly. Behind the plain uniform beat a heart that had once burned for art, a soul that once dreamed without limits. And yet, here she was treated as amusement, as a pawn in one man's arrogant declaration that everything had a price. Her heartbeat thundered as if it might tear free from her chest. In her mind, Isabella's fragile face flickered the child's wide eyes staring up at her through pain. $10,000, an impossible sum, meant another round of treatment, another month of life. In that moment, the clash between dignity and love roared inside her like a flood. Grant leaned back, lips curled into a smug smile. He believed he had struck the finishing blow, convinced the girl would bow her head, trembling before money. Around them, eyes brimmed with pity and curiosity, yet no one spoke. No one intervened. In this world of expensive suits and glittering gowns, the dignity of a waitress was nothing more than a passing diversion. Elena swallowed hard. Her body trembled, but her eyes flared with another fire. She did not know what choice she would make, but she knew from this moment on, life would never be the same. Every gaze in the room, every ounce of power and wealth here, was waiting for her decision. A decision that could destroy her, or make the world remember the name Elena Marquez. Well then, my dear audience, stay tuned for a story that will leave you in awe. Take just a second to like this video and subscribe only if you truly resonate with what I'm sharing here. And don't forget to leave a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see friends joining us from all around the world. The atmosphere in the banquet hall grew so heavy it felt as though it could be cut into pieces. Elena stood frozen, but in her mind flickered heart-wrenching images. Isabella's frail shoulders trembling with every wave of pain, the soulless repetition of the ventilator in that stark white hospital room, and the medical bills crashing down on her back like boulders. For Grant Ellison, $10,000 was nothing more than a casual gamble. But for her, it could mean one more precious treatment, one more month of life for the sister she had sworn to protect at all costs. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and opened them with a different gaze. They were no longer the eyes of a humble waitress, but the eyes of a warrior who had found strength in the depths of despair. Her voice rang out, not trembling, but calm and resolute. The entire hall held its breath as she laid down her condition, not to dance in the narrow aisle under humiliating pressure, but on the stage where the lights converged, the place that belonged to art and true value. And above all, the money had to be paid up front, a declaration that her dignity would never be dangled like a wager. Her words struck like a slap across Grant's arrogant face. For a brief moment, his smile faltered before twisting quickly into a mocking laugh. He still believed he controlled the game, that a working girl could never overturn the board before him. The platinum card was drawn, swiped across the portable machine the frantic manager had just brought over. The numbers appeared on the screen, simple, cold, absolute. $10,000, a small sum for him, but the entire sky for her. The receipt was torn off and placed into Elena's hand like a certificate of submission. Grant was certain he had secured. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, eyes gleaming with triumph. To him, what was about to unfold would be nothing but a cheap comedy for amusement, a smug validation of his belief that every person had a price. But Elena did not tremble. Her fingers tightened around the receipt. Then she slipped it carefully into the pocket of her apron. The movement was nothing like a captive. Conceding it was the gesture of a warrior grasping a weapon. Her bare foot turned slightly, directing her toward the stage where the piano had just fallen silent. Every gaze followed her steps, wide-eyed with shock and curiosity. The hotel lights gleamed over her long black hair as she slowly pulled out the pins that bound it. Each strand falling loose was like a layer of her old self stripped away, restoring the identity she had buried for years. Elena set aside her stiff black shoes. Her bare feet pressed against the cold marble floor, and that very chill awakened her body. The room was stunned. They had expected a clumsy, awkward, perhaps even pitiful display. But what Elena was about to deliver was not cheap entertainment. It was an answer not spoken in words, but through her body, her heart, and the pride that had been suppressed for so long. Grant watched, his eyes a mix of amusement and disdain. He did not realize he had lit a flame that could never be extinguished. The chair he sat upon, which seemed so solid, was now nothing more than a fragile perch before the storm rising in the very heart of the ballroom. Elena drew a deep breath, her shoulders tightening as she prepared for the moment when humiliation would be transformed into strength. Silence filled everything, even the background music fell away. A moment suspended between expectation and fear. She was ready to step into a battle no one had foreseen. And that room, in just a few minutes, would witness something that no one, not even Grant Ellison, would ever forget. Do you dare to believe that a single dance could change an entire life, not only hers, but that of the very man who dared to challenge her? Elena stepped into the warm, golden spotlight streaming down from the high ceiling, where the piano had just fallen silent. Everything around her seemed to be pulled into that silence. The clinking of silverware, the hum of conversation, even the sound of breath ceased. They waited for a clumsy performance, an awkward dance to laugh at. But Elena was no longer the waitress in a black uniform. She loosened her neat bun, letting her glossy black hair spill down her back like silk shimmering under the chandelier. The heavy shoes were kicked aside, leaving her bare feet trembling against the cold marble floor. Yet the chill awakened something deep within her soul. There was no music, no choreography prepared, only the beat of her heart and the pain she had carried for years. Elena closed her eyes, raised her arms, and began. Her body stirred, trembling, like a bow straining under an unseen weight. Each movement was not to please the eye, but to tell a story. A violent jerk of the hand, a heavy step, as though she were resisting the weight of the entire world. It was the rage from the humiliation she had just endured, the loss of a shattered childhood, the desperate love for her sister in the hospital. She spun, her legs carved turns with precision that would make the most prestigious academies nod, only to shatter it suddenly with harsh, raw, feral strikes. Classical ballet merged with modern dance, transforming her body into a language no words could contain. The hall held its breath. Powerful men, accustomed to signing billion-dollar contracts, now felt small before an artist bearing her soul. Women in glittering gowns, once cold and aloof, now clutched their chests as if to steady their racing hearts. Elena collapsed to the floor. Her shoulders shook, tears streamed down, but her eyes still blazed with defiance. That final pose was not one of defeat, but of a warrior rising from the ashes. Silence stretched, taut as a string ready to snap. Then applause erupted, thunder rolling across the Dallas sky. The clapping spread, relentless, unending. One by one, from the nearest tables to the very back of the hall, people rose to their feet. The entire room, businessmen, politicians, those who once believed money was the only measure, now bowed before a waitress. Elena stood in the light, not smiling, not bowing. She simply drew in a deep breath, letting the waves of applause crash over her. Because she knew this dance was not just for the audience, but for herself, for her lost parents, for the sister still fighting illness. In the corner of the room, Grant Ellison sat in shock. The smug smile that had always adorned his face had drained away. He thought he had bought humiliation, a cruel spectacle. But what he had bought was a masterpiece. And that masterpiece tore through his arrogant facade, exposing a cold emptiness he had never known. That night, Dallas did not simply witness a performance. It witnessed the moment a soul broke free of its chains. My dear audience, take a short break or grab a glass of water, then stay with us for what comes next, because the surprises are far from over. Comment number 1 if you're enjoying the story, so we know you're still here with us. The next morning, Dallas was still drenched in golden sunlight as if nothing had changed. But for Elena, the world was no longer the same. On her phone screen, a grainy video was spreading at terrifying speed. The headline blared, "Dallas Millionaire challenges Waitress and you won't believe what happens." The person filming was just a server hiding behind the bar, hands trembling as they captured a moment no one had expected to become history. Within hours, the video had surpassed 1 million views. By the end of the day, it soared to 5 million. Major news outlets plastered bold headlines: "The Angel of Dallas," "The Flame in the Apron," "The Dance of Dignity." On Twitter, the hashtag number Dance of Dignity shot to the top of global trends. TikTok overflowed with covers, frame-by-frame breakdowns of each movement, each fiery glance from Elena. People recreated the moment she collapsed to the floor and rose again, calling it a symbol of strength and the will to live. The world saw a fairy tale unfolding in the heart of harsh reality. A waitress, small and invisible, daring to stand up against the arrogance of wealth. To the public, it was a triumph of human pride. But to Elena, it was a nightmare. She had never sought fame. That dance was not a performance, not meant to be a symbol. It was a scream torn from the depths of her heart, a fight for her sister and for the dignity that had been trampled. Yet now, every private moment had been dissected, commented on, and shared by millions as a form of entertainment. She felt stripped bare in the public square of the internet, with no place to hide. Every notification on her phone weighed heavier than the last. People praised her, people wept, people turned her into a hashtag, a symbol. But no one saw the truth behind the hospital door, where a child was still struggling for every breath. The virality felt like a fire, one that illuminated, yet burned its own source. Meanwhile, Grant Ellison faced a different reckoning. His face appeared in the video, the arrogant stare, the crooked smile as he raised his platinum card, now the emblem of the cruelty of the rich. Headlines were merciless. Millionaire turns a woman's pain into a joke, a living example of power-blinding conscience. His image was mocked, turned into memes, shared endlessly across platforms. For the first time in his life, Grant was no longer in control of the story. He could not buy the silence of the internet. He could not erase the trace of a moment millions had witnessed. Worse still, alone in his luxury apartment watching the video again, he saw more than public outrage. He saw himself an empty man diminishing others to assert power. And in the instant Elena rose from the marble floor, her eyes blazing, he saw the absolute contrast, true dignity facing hollow arrogance. For the first time, Grant felt disgust toward himself. Elena did not read all the articles, nor did she answer interviews. She quietly went to the hospital, sitting by her sister's bed, holding those fragile hands tight. Isabella's eyes sparkled when she heard, "You're famous all over the world now, sis." But Elena only bowed her head. To her, it was not glory. It was painful exposure, a loss of privacy that nothing could ever restore. Out there, the world rejoiced over the Angel of Dallas. But inside, Elena felt adrift, caught in the whirlwind of the spotlight. Could she transform this media storm into an opportunity, or would it crush the rest of her life? The noise on the internet was not enough to keep Grant Ellison awake at night, but another obsession did. The image of Elena in that dance replayed in his mind like an endless loop. Her blazing eyes, the furious spins, the pride rising from pain, all of it stripped him bare, turning the arrogance he had worn for years into nothing but an empty shell. He could not look away. He could not pretend to forget. And so, for the first time in his life, Grant did not try to buy silence. He sought the truth. The best investigators were hired within hours. They dug deeper than public records, following trails through medical files, school transcripts, and scattered memories within the artistic circles that once knew the name Elena Marquez. 2 days later, a thin dossier lay on the table of his penthouse. Grant opened it, and each page cut into his conscience like a cold blade, disturbing a part of him that had rarely been touched. Elena was no nameless girl from the shadows. She had once been a ballet prodigy, a blazing star at 16 when she won a full scholarship to Juilliard, the dream of thousands of young dancers around the world. The press had called her the Mexican wind sweeping through New York, a young woman carrying both the rigors of discipline and the fire of passion. But that brilliance was extinguished by a car accident. Her parents died instantly. Her 12-year-old sister Isabella survived, but with a chronic bone disease that gnawed away at her fragile body day by day. Grant read slowly, each line pressing heavier upon him. Elena left school, abandoned the stage of her dreams, and entered another kind of life, the life of endless, thankless jobs. Waiting tables, cleaning rooms, cashiering at supermarkets, overnight shifts at laundromats. Every dollar she earned went to hospitals, to prescriptions insurance would never cover. The figure in her financial file stunned him. More than $300,000 in medical debt, with not a single asset to her name. All of it, just to buy Isabella one more day of life at a time. He paused, staring at the last photo in the file. Elena at her Juilliard graduation performance, radiant in a white dress, her arabesque reaching high, her eyes brimming with faith. And then he remembered her face that night, collapsed on the marble floor, tears streaming, yet her eyes still ablaze. The revelation hit him like a blow. Elena had not danced for his money, not at all. She danced for her sister's survival, for a love too great, for a wound too deep. And he, through his arrogant game, had trampled on that wound, turning it into a spectacle. Grant's stomach twisted, a wave of nausea rising. In the polished silence of his 50th floor apartment, he sank into his chair, feeling for the first time the crushing weight of the word guilt. No contract could erase what he had done. No amount of money could buy back the dignity he had violated. For the first time, Grant recognized his own fragility. A man who thought power lived in numbers, yet stood helpless before the raw truth of a woman who had sacrificed her life for her family. In his mind, one question echoed, sharp and haunting. Could he do anything at all to atone for this sin? Do you think Grant will seek Elena out to ask for forgiveness, or will he choose instead to redeem himself silently through his actions? Grant Ellison had never been familiar with the feeling of helplessness. For years he had commanded massive deals, moved companies like chess pieces, and nothing had ever slipped beyond his grasp. Yet, as he held Elena's life file in his hands, he realized for the first time that there were wounds money could not mend, and mistakes power could not cover. He needed to do something different. In those long nights of torment, Grant began with an unprecedented decision: to create a foundation called Phoenix, rising, a symbol of rebirth from ashes. It was worth $50 million, but not to polish his image, not with flashy PR campaigns. It was designed solely for young artists who had lost their chances due to illness, accidents, or crushing family burdens. He wanted to build another doorway, one where talents like Elena could step through without paying the price of desperate sacrifice. At the same time, Grant reached out to the hospital, not in his own name, but through an anonymous research endowment. Every cost of Isabella's treatment was covered, from the expensive medications to the newest experimental therapies. His name appeared on no documents. To the world, it was nothing but a fortunate stroke of research funding. To Elena, it was an unexpected miracle. But Grant did not stop there. He began to step into the foreign world Elena had once lived in and lost, the world of ballet. He read memoirs of dancers, spoke with choreographers, and even spent hours in small theaters just to glimpse the fragility, the merciless discipline, and the quiet toll that art took on the body. He realized that ballet was not just a beautiful performance. It was a silent war with pain, with time, with life's injustice. Meanwhile, in another corner of New York, Elena was slowly rediscovering herself. Each morning, she slipped into an old studio in Brooklyn. The dusty mirror reflected the silhouette of a woman long estranged from the stage, yet her legs, though trembling, still remembered the rhythm. Muscles ached, breath came ragged, but every small movement brought a fragment of memory back to life. After long hours at Isabella's bedside, the studio became the place where she could breathe again. And then, a ghost from the past returned. Madison Clark, Elena's old classmate at Juilliard, was now a celebrated soloist in a prestigious New York company. Madison had always competed ruthlessly, envious of the brilliance Elena once possessed. And when the viral videos spread, she could not accept the truth that someone who had disappeared from the art world had returned to claim the spotlight. Madison began to whisper. At first, only a few words in backstage corridors. Elena hasn't returned for art. She's just a puppet propped up by a millionaire's PR stunt. The whispers spread quickly, taking root in a media landscape forever hungry for scandal. Tabloids exploded. Elena, tragic victim or pawn in a Dallas Millionaire's game? The woman who had been hailed as a symbol of dignity was now dragged down into a cruel farce. At the same time, Grant became the center of a new storm. From the arrogant man once scorned, he was now painted as the manipulator, a wealthy puppeteer crafting a fake sob story. His silence, meant to prove sincerity, was twisted as evidence of a shady scheme. Elena read those words, her heart clenched tight. Once again, her life was being rewritten, reshaped by others' hands. She saw Madison's face on an art magazine cover, smiling triumphantly. And deep inside, Elena knew this battle was no longer just about defending herself. It was about reclaiming the truth. Would Elena have the strength to rise once more? When an old rival was determined to destroy her and the media stood ready to turn her into nothing more than another tragedy for entertainment, the charity gala at Lincoln Center cast an unusual glow over New York City. Outside, a line of limousines stretched under the flashes of reporters' cameras. Inside, the grand hall glittered with dazzling gowns and expensive tuxedos. On the main banner, the name Phoenix Rising Foundation stood out, the new fund Grant Ellison had established, though no one knew it was born out of repentance. Backstage, Madison Clark smiled at the mirror. She knew tonight she would be the star. The press was already primed with the headline, "New York Soloist Conquers Lincoln Center." For Madison, this was not merely a performance, but a declaration that Elena was nothing more than a false star, a stain that had risen by accident from the chaos of social media. But the audience had no idea of the surprise awaiting them. When the program reached its special segment, the stage lights suddenly dimmed, then flared again. The host's voice rang out. "A special performance reserved only for tonight. Please welcome Elena Marquez." The hall erupted in gasps and whispers. A name that had become an internet legend, a victim of rumor, a symbol of controversy. Now she stepped forward, not in a waitress's apron, not under the lights of a Dallas restaurant, but onto the most prestigious stage in New York. Elena wore a simple white dress, no sequins, no elaborate layers. Her hair fell loose, her gaze calm yet burning. She stood at the center of the stage, bare feet planted on the polished wooden floor, as if the entire world had to hold its breath for her. The music began, not loud, not grand, only the warm hum of a cello, steady like a heartbeat. Elena moved. No longer with the fury of that Dallas night, no longer with spins like screams. This time, every motion was controlled, charged with the strength of one who had embraced pain and risen beyond it. An arabesque stretched high, graceful yet unyielding, a declaration of dignity, a string of sharp fouettes, each turn a decisive answer to every accusation of being a PR puppet. The audience held its breath. No one saw a victim. They saw an artist reborn from ashes, turning tragedy into power. Each movement from Elena pierced through doubt, erasing rumors, igniting the hall in thunderous awe. When the dance reached its peak, Elena stopped, lifted her head, her eyes sweeping across the hall. In that instant, silence fell so heavy that one could hear the pounding of their own hearts. Then, like a breaking wave, the entire Lincoln Center rose to its feet. Applause crashed like a storm, rolling endlessly. Backstage, Madison stood frozen. Her practiced smile crumbled into a vacant stare. No headline could rescue the truth laid bare on that stage. Elena had triumphed, not with excuses, but with pure art. In the front row, Grant sat unable to hold back tears for the first time in his life. They fell, not from guilt, but from pure reverence. He knew in that moment Elena had not only reclaimed her own story, but opened a new chapter for countless young artists who had never been heard. When the lights dimmed and Elena stepped down from the stage, sweat glistened on her face, but her eyes shone clear, as though she had just found herself again. At the wing, Grant waited. Not with a smug smile, not with the bearing of power only as an ordinary man, hand outstretched, trembling, yet sincere. Phoenix Rising needs an artistic director, he said softly, his voice breaking with emotion. Not as charity. This is an offer of partnership. I want you to build the stage for those who were once like you. Elena looked into his eyes. No longer was there a barrier between a millionaire and a waitress. No longer the distance between the one who had sinned and the one who had suffered. Only two people who had seen the truth in each other. She placed her hand firmly into his. A new chapter began. This dance was no longer for the Lincoln Center alone, but for an entire generation of artists who had never had a voice. The story of Elena Marquez reminds us that dignity cannot be bought, and even in the darkest moments, one can rise, turning pain into strength. Sometimes, all it takes is one person daring to step onto the stage with truth, and the whole world will have no choice but to listen. If this story has touched you, leave a comment below right now, share your thoughts, and don't forget to like and share the video so that many others can be inspired. Thank you for staying with us.